Here's where we are so far in week one. You should have finished up the discussion post from last week about how to mark a book, and that guides our understanding of how we are to be active readers throughout this course. Remember, we're reading models of composition in order to move from being proficient writers to effective writers. You have an assignment in Vocabulary Unit 1 for Sadler Oxford. You have those practice exercises to work through to help you learn the words. And we will spend some time on Thursday talking about the quiz. The quiz will be open in Sadler then on Friday for you to complete. That does count for a grade. In fact, it is 25 points. Then yesterday we began sentence level constructions. Again, we began at the word level. We're moving up to the sentence level, and we're eventually getting to the paragraph level of improving our writing. So that was a very quick exercise to help you get accustomed to that idea of combining sentences to increase variety. And we'll do more of those throughout the semester. There's a really short assignment to get you started. By the end of the week, I'd like for you to submit that document in Moodle so that I can see that you've done it, and that will get you 5 points. I want to spend some time today talking about the model essay that you're reading. Now, this is the first of several essays that we're going to read in this unit. Next week will be primarily reading models of description and narration. So the book that I use for this course is called Short Takes. And so that means it is a collection of collegiate essays that are relatively short, but illustrate some sort of mode of development. The essay that you're reading today is entitled The Bridge, and it illustrates the mode of development of description. And so the questions that you're going to answer after reading this will guide you through some understanding of how do effective writers use description as a mode of development. And then obviously essay number 1 that's due on September 10th will ask you to employ some of those strategies that you've read in the model compositions. So the whole point of this course is built around reading models of good and effective writing and then emulating those characteristics in your own writing. So in dealing with the bridge today, you're going to see that it begins here, and if you'll notice, it's 6 paragraphs. Now again, when we think about good, effective writing, maybe you're very familiar with the 5-paragraph model of essay writing, where you have an introductory paragraph, a conclusion paragraph, 3 body paragraphs. The thesis is directly stated in the first paragraph, usually the last sentence of the first paragraph, and then everything is organized around that thesis. That is a proficient model, and it works. We're moving beyond the 5-paragraph essay model to something a little more subtle, a little more sophisticated, because that's what collegiate writing is. It is subtle and it is sophisticated. And that's what I want you to be able to see in the bridge. So you'll notice that this is a 6-paragraph essay, and the paragraph lengths vary. Some are a little bit longer than others. You're going to notice also some sentence variety. Some of the author's sentences are really, really short. Some are medium length, and some are long, convoluted, and complicated sentences. And those impact meaning, content, and they impact the pacing of the essay. And one of the things that a collegiate writer is able to accomplish is that they can control the pace of the writing. So I want you to be aware of that as you read this essay. So using what you know from Adler's advice, I want you to mark this essay up. Write on it, annotate it, underline it, highlight it, whatever you need to do to help you digest it. You may want to read it a couple of different times. It's really short. It won't take you but just a few minutes to read through the essay. And then there's some questions in a Google form that you're going to answer about this particular essay. So you're going to notice a few things. For example, effective writers break rules. Notice this. I can see it now. The 4 of us sitting out on the wood bridge puffing on our cheap Swisher cigars. The smoke rising above the rusty cast iron sides and filtering up to the full moon above. As the moon reflects off the Goose River, my friends and I sit and talk about everything from girls to UFO theories. We sit without a worry on our minds. Now, one of the questions is going to ask you to identify a 1 or 2 word statement about each paragraph. So if I were identifying a 1 or 2 word statement of main idea, I might label that as bridge, all right, because it's basically introducing us to this place. This is an essay about place, a description of a place. You'll notice there are lines such as this. The smoke rising above the rusty cast iron sides and filtering up the full moon above. Now, if you were to type that in a document, it's probably going to underline it as having a grammatical mistake. Can you recognize the grammatical mistake that's there? Is that a complete sentence? Well, the answer is no. In order for it to be a complete sentence, it has to have a complete subject and predicate. This doesn't. It's lacking a predicate. Now, you may say, well, rising is a verb. Well, in this case, rising is functioning as a gerund because it's modifying smoke, okay? Or actually, it's a participial phrase that's modifying smoke. The smoke rising above the rusty cast iron sides and then filtering up to the full moon above. There's not a predicate. So what you've got here is a subject fragment. But this essay is included in a college textbook. So that's got to be a good thing and not a mistake. All right, so we've got to understand that making a mistake of using a fragment is not a good thing. But used intentionally, a fragment can be quite effective. And here, the author has used a fragment for effect. So one of the first things we're learning here is that the 5-paragraph model isn't the only model. Sometimes I want to have short paragraphs. Sometimes I want to have short sentences. And even sometimes I can bend the rules by having a sentence fragment for effect. Now, you can't just throw fragments around just at will. It's got to be by design and for effect. But here it's used very effectively. Think about what he's doing. He wants you to see the scene. He wants you to visualize it. And the way to focus on the scene is to use a sentence fragment that just gives you the main subject, the bridge. So as you read through this, notice things like that, and then label a 1 or 2 word main idea. And at the end of that, I want you to notice a progression, because what you're going to see about effective writers is that details are arranged in a deliberate order. It may look very random, but once you analyze the underlying structure, you're going to see that there is a purpose and a reason. So paragraph 2, if it were placed anywhere else in the essay, would not be as effective. Paragraph 3 is where it is because it has a direct relation to the paragraph before and after it. Your job is to figure out what is that relationship and how would you characterize it. The other thing I want you to notice about this essay, in the traditional 5-paragraph model, the thesis statement is usually the last sentence of the first paragraph, and it's directly stated. We would call that an explicit thesis, all right? So the word explicit simply means directly stated, all right? So for example, if you download music and it has a little E beside of it or has something that says explicit lyrics, what does that mean? Well, it means that the artist doesn't hint at something, but it comes right out and says it. So it's very explicit, all right? This essay uses something called an implied or implicit thesis statement. So I want you to get familiar with that term. Implicit. So if something is implicit, it means that it's not directly stated, it's implied. The author is going to build all of the details in this essay to one overall point that's not directly stated. So in other words, you can't put your finger on one sentence in this essay and say, aha, that's the thesis of this essay. Instead, you're going to have to state it in your own words based on all the details. Now, that's a little trickier than it sounds. Explicit thesis statement is fairly easy because as the author, you write it, you control it, and then you're going to organize your thoughts around it. But to write well with an implicit thesis demands that every little choice that you make in terms of word choice, sentence structure, paragraph placement, organization, transition, all of those have to be coherent and logical, deliberate decisions that you make that lead your reader to understanding the implied thesis. All right? See how this is a college essay? See how this is more subtle and more sophisticated than just a directly stated thesis statement at the beginning of the essay. So this is perhaps deceptively simple in its presentation. But what I hope you find is an appreciation for what the author has actually done here very deliberately. So you're going to find after reading that you have a link to a Google form. And you're going to submit this, and this will count as part of the points for this week's assignments. And you've got basically two sets of questions, one about like sentence level construction and organization, and one about ideas and techniques. So for example, paragraph 1 tells you where the scene takes place. We've read that paragraph. And who is there? What else does it do? So you can say things like, it sets the scene. It focuses the reader on the object or the place. And you know automatically that everything in this essay is going to be about a place, and more importantly, how it makes the author feel. One other note about the essays in this course: we read nonfiction primarily. There's one unit of fiction. But in reading nonfiction, this is like a personal narrative. So it's a descriptive essay that is a personal narrative. When you write essay 1, it's going to be nonfiction. It's not going to be about an imaginary experience. It's going to be about a real experience that you've had, and it's going to use description. And there's the question that asks you to identify one or two word main idea, and so on. You go on to the next set, you're going to get some more questions. And the very last question is state the thesis of the essay in your own words. That's what I'm talking about. That's an implicit thesis. So it's not going to be a sentence that you lift from the essay. It's going to be in your own words, one declarative sentence that is the implied thesis statement. Okay? If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. My plan for Thursday of this week is that we do a Google Meet, which will be live so that you can ask me questions in real time. We're primarily going to use that time to go over every item that's on the vocabulary quiz. I don't want there to be any surprises about that vocabulary quiz. You should be very well prepared and able to use all of your resources on that. So I'm going to speak to you tomorrow about how to do that. You can ask me questions, and you can certainly ask me questions about how to answer these questions regarding the bridge. So everything this week, from the vocabulary quiz to this Google form with questions to the sentence level, the sentence combining exercise, all of that is due by midnight on Sunday. So I will begin looking at those come Monday to give you scores. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email, and I look forward to meeting with you tomorrow.